Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another electric episode of The Lion's Den. I'm your host, Venezia Leone, and today I sat down with Paul Harris, founder and CEO of Aurora Multimedia, a company he's been building and evolving since the late 90s. In this episode, we talk about what it actually looks like to build a business over the long term, from early scrappy beginnings and landing your first major deal to navigating industry shifts, global crises, and constant technological change. We get into the realities of scaling, how to stay proactive in unpredictable environments, and why execution and speed often matter more than perfection. We also spend time on leadership, what it means to build a culture that works, how to adapt your style as a company grows, and where founders tend to waste time when things get hard. There's a strong focus in this episode on taking action, staying flexible, and building something that can evolve over time. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us on the Lion's Den today.
How you doing? Great to be here.
Good, good. So you have been building Aurora Multimedia since 1998. What originally got you into that space, especially so early on in media?
Well, for me, like anything else, it depends on what you're exposed to when you're around that age. So I always was earlier on I was into robotics, but then eventually got more into video space and audio. Sometimes things just have a way of working out. So when I first graduated college, I went to go apply for jobs in audiovisual, like Sony and places like that. Settled in a video wall company where I got my first experience in the real world as far as engineering is concerned. And we were doing 3-gun projectors, which are the old style when you have the 3 tubes, as well as the video walls, the one, many monitors making up one big image. Mm-hmm. Except I'll date myself, and it was still the CRTs with the big gaps between the image. And so, but it was a little bit of more circumstance. Sometimes when you just brought into the situation, it just all comes to you at that point. I'm sure if it was more medical related, I probably would end up doing more medical or whatever it was. In this case, everything audiovisual kept coming my way, and it came easy for me, and I liked it. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs that they sort of stumbled into the space, but I think it's really important to also be open in those spaces. Like, it's not just like, oh, it came at you, but you were like actively interested and like staying on top of it and having ideas. And so I think, like, as much as you feel like you stumbled in, I think some of it was probably a little intentional.
Well, once you're exposed to different things, what ends up happening is you start to decide what interests you most. So, for example, at one time I was into it, like I said, when I was probably my early teens, I liked robotics a lot, and I thought I was going to possibly be medical robotics or something with robotics. And then just as I saw the video, what it took, where it was going at the time, it caught more of my interest. And plus it was, you're acclimating well. That happens to be your job at the time. So whether you like it or not, that is what you're doing. But like any other job, if you find that you don't like it, then people eventually leave and they move on to a different career path. When I left and I moved on, I kept staying with it. So obviously at that point I was adapted to it. I liked it, and I just built on it personally and then turned it into a business.
Yeah. So I want to hear more about sort of how you turned it into a business. Was there a moment early on where you realized, like, this could be a business that I own and operate for my life? Like, talk me through sort of that early stage.
Well, some people are really good listeners. Some people are really good talkers. I'm probably a good talker more than a listener. So when it came to educating, I always learned a lot of this stuff on my own. Not that college or school doesn't help. I believe highly in it. It rounds you out. But to really be good at something, you have to have a genuine interest, almost to a hobby level. You can't just part-time it. And when it came to electronics, I never really part-timed it. So from that perspective, I was really ingrained in it at that point. So when I first got started, I started with software at 9 years old. And then my first product that I developed, which was partially video related, was at about 17 years old. Wow. I made a thing that did T-shirts. For those you remember Commodore and Amiga computers, I built a system using that computer to generate full color images on a T-shirt. Called it Digitrans was the name of the company. And that was the first thing where I learned um, kind of the ins and outs of owning something of your own before I went on to college. So I got a kind of a taste of it, but that was my own desire, was to want to own it. Just like how a baseball player knows they wanted to be a baseball player, and a football player knew he wanted to be a football player. I knew I was going to engineer and invent things. I wanted to be an inventor, but I wanted to be also an entrepreneur and own my own company. So even from an early age, I got acclimated to having my first DBA, learned the ropes, and you didn't have access to the internet just like that the way it is today. So you were doing things the hard way. I was going to talk to attorneys and hear what they had to say. I was going to the library, figuring things out, the good old fashioned way, microfiche, all those type of wonderful things. And so yeah, you had to, just like you would do today on the internet, we just had to do it a little bit harder back then. But, it progresses is what ends up happening, more or less, at least for me. I mean, I can only speak on myself, but you get inspired with things, you continue it. And then, so in my case, when I was doing the different projects, I was also in the background still designing hardware and coming up with ideas. And all of a sudden, when I was in one of my jobs, they happened to be Lockheed Martin, as a matter of fact, and they were doing audio for supervising the entire facility. So they had paging supervision, is what they would call it. And so what happened with me, at least, is I saw an opportunity. And they, at the time, the company, if I remember correctly, was about $600,000 they wanted to do that project. And I looked at them and said, if I could design you one from ground up and sold it to you for half the price, would you buy it from me? And they said, yeah, we need proof that it's going to work, but sure. And then I said, okay. At the time, I asked my boss, I said, hey, you want to do this? And they said, no, we don't want to do it, but if you want to do it on your own, knock yourself out, we'll install it. I said, okay. So I did. I literally, if they saw me in the day how I did it, I did it the old-fashioned way. I literally printed out my own circuit board, etched it, took a little Dremel and drilled every little hole into the board, hand soldered every component, developed the whole thing, wrote all the code, did everything. Wow. And I think it was 3 months later, I showed up with the prototype, showed them it works, and they inevitably awarded me the project. And it was 7 million square feet with, I think it was 300 to 400 zones of paging. And that was my first, hey, I did something cool here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, built every one of those boards by hand. But sometimes that's what you got to do. If you want it, you can't just wait for it to come to you. There's got to be a little bit of an aggression in there, where you got to go after it. You can't just sit back and wait for it. So I always had this habit of going after things. So I went after it, but I did it the right way. I made sure I had the permissions where I needed it. You don't want to step on, people's toes when you're doing things. And so I did it. So yeah, that's an example of kind of how it progressed.
Yeah. And it's cool to hear that you were able to sort of build a space for yourself that wasn't even in direct competition with the space you were already occupying, like as an employee of a different company. Like, I think a lot of times when people say, hey, I can do this better, or I want to do this better, I want to do this differently, like there's hesitation or stress or something of like, okay, well, how do I break out of that and do it on my own? And it sounds like, to your point, if you get the right permissions and you do it the right way and all of that, then nobody's really upset at you for doing that.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about, especially if you're working for somebody else. You definitely want to do something like that. Either that or make your choice and leave the company, but make sure you're financially secure. Everything has a risk. When I went out on my own, I was in my mid to late 20s at the time. And when I went out on my own to start Aurora, it's a little scary because now all your income's coming from, one place. And so at the time, we were just a programming company only. And so we did it. We actually made more money than working for the employer at the time. But we didn't just start it. We knew we were going to have clients needing the service that we provided at the time. And then it evolved by merging another company. I kind of that paging supervision was called Zytec with a Z. Some people spell it with an X, believe it or not. That's another lesson in coming up with names for a company, is never pick Z or X. Always at the bottom of the marketing list. There's always a lesson for something. So But that was my company, Zytec, which did products. And then I merged it into Aurora because I didn't really want to run two companies, and I was going to start to create a synergy between the two. And then eventually I went all out and started making the products that we make today, which is control automation, video distribution, which is AV over IP. Now we're doing beamforming microphones. Those are really cool. So
cool. I gotta check them out. So as you describe that, what pops into my head is like, there's been very many different phases of Aurora, it sounds like. What's been the hardest or one of the hardest periods for you to navigate?
When there's a world crisis, I mean, look at COVID. A lot of companies sat back and thought they were going to ride it out. And then in our case, I don't like for things to work themselves out on their own. You have to think of when this is something I always recommend to a business owner. You got to watch the news, and not just a particular channel that you get fixated on. You watch the opposing news channels, and me, I like to find the truth in the middle. If they both agree and say the same story, I know you're getting the truth majority of the time. If they have the difference of opinions, then I got to continue to research to come up with the proper conclusion. Otherwise, you get this polarized politics that you get today. I don't like to play that game. I like to come up with my own formulation, and whereas other people like to get caught up by the sensationalization of a headline, not reading the actual content of what's behind it, so that the headline can make you go in one direction versus the other. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. I can totally pivot off on that. But getting back to what you were asking, the reason why I watch is because, for example, when COVID came on, you would watch it on the news. As depressing as it may have been at the time, you're watching what's going on. It's not going away anymore in maybe a few weeks. This thing's growing. It's getting worse. Now it eventually becomes a pandemic. It's global. When you see things like that and things are shutting down where they're closing, especially hospitality down, and I do cater a lot to hospitality, digital signage. I need people to be in an office for our products to succeed, because we do mostly digital signage, corporate education. And if people aren't going out, there's no need to use our equipment, which now puts us in a very sticky situation. So if I waited for it to ride out, I would have had a few years of almost nothing. You get something, but nothing to sustain a company. And especially during COVID, everybody saw their sales drop, especially the restaurants. As that was, some adapted, some didn't. So in our case, the first thing we did was we said, okay, what are they going to need in a pandemic that relates to the stuff that we know best? And then they started mandating thermal checks, which is, temperature. Like, what if we make a temperature tablet, get it to market really fast? And you all saw them. We were the first ones to market in the United States with the temperature tablet.
Wow.
And it worked, and it worked well. And we sold, oh my God, in 6 weeks, we sold 6,000 like that. For us in a non-public space. I know, like, when you sell a Samsung phone, you'll sell millions of them, like right off the bat. But when you're a company of our size, and you're in you're a higher priced item with lower volume, getting 6,000 in 6 weeks is a pretty big deal for what you charge for that particular type of a product. So we did very well for ourselves. The timing was everything. So the first timing part was, could we get first to market, which we did? Did we solve a problem that people are going to need, which check that one off too? And how long do you think that's even going to last for, which was an unknown. So the key is, even if it didn't last, we knew that if it doesn't last, it's because something else changed, or we're returning back to the workforce. Well, it wasn't because we returned back to the workforce. It was because they realized temperature tablets were just not doing enough. People were getting it they found that you can transmit it without having a temperature, and it became less of a criteria. So that time period, which worked well for us, ended. Unfortunately, during that time period, this is where the panic happens, where you got a lot of Chinese company dumping these little 8-inch panels on the market. Probably a lot of us saw them. They were mounted portrait mount, and most of them didn't work. It was a joke. They literally dumped tons of thermal tablets that we call them random number generators, and they just didn't work. But that was our new competition. About 2-3 months into what we were doing, they became our competition. So the irony is here we're trying to keep people in business, yet out of panic, people were just buying whatever they could from China or wherever they could get it, just so they could sell something and then keep their business, help the other people keep, it in business. So we saw a lot go down there. You see loyalty at play. You see a lot of different sides of people is what happened in that particular situation. Now, right now, it's hard to say because every time everybody says you're going to go into a recession, the economy tends to prove us wrong. But with the way things are going, definitely things are slowing down. They're not exactly speeding up. Mortgage rates are up right now. Gas prices are going through the roof. That means inflation has to go with it. You can't avoid inflation. And then you got other things. The AI market for us is crushing the overall electronic market because they're sucking up all the memories. Things that we would pay maybe $30 for 2 chips is now almost $180 for the same 2 chips 6 months ago. Yeah, it's scary. The ratio. People don't realize we got to pass these. The tariffs. You just never know when it's going to go up or down. And the reality is, we the American manufacturers pay the tariffs. And so, don't want to get into a whole another political conversation on that one, but I'll put it out there. I've paid 6 figures in tariffs. So,
Wow.
Not the other countries. We paid it. And so you got to choose. Are you going to pass it along to the customer? Are you going to eat it? Or are you going to split it? What are you going to do? And at what point do you do it? Because you got to watch your competitors. At what point are they going to do it? Because you can't just do it. You got to unfortunately wait for your competitors to do it. So there's a lot. There's always, as by those examples, always some complex thing at play going on. But the job of a CEO is to, or even an executive who's in charge of mitigating this, is to stay on top of what the global politics are. Because somehow, some way, in our case, we're an electronic company. If you're a restaurant and you see that cost of goods and groceries are going up, your prices inevitably have to go up also. And also as a result of that, people are going to go out less. And that means their business is going to go down and their expenses are going to go up. So now what do you do?
Yep.
Do you call it a day? Or do you maybe have to readapt and rethink how you run things? Do you have to maybe start to lighten up staff before it gets too late? Anyway, there's always something you have to, as I say, be proactive over. You got to really watch what's going on.
Yeah. So how does that proactivity, how do you actually embody that on the day-to-day, right? So I think in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's really easy for me to be like, oh, I'm always going to be one step ahead of the chores I have to do or the impending global doom. But what does that really look like for you day to day of being proactive?
Well, the first thing I do is when I first walk into the office or even when I first wake up, the first thing I do is I just check my emails and I see, is there anything that needs attention? So to this day, it's not that I'm micromanaging, but I like to know everything that's going on as a whole. Do I go into every little finite detail? No, you got to let things happen, but you should know at least at least from my point of view, you got to know where are your sales, what do your customers think of what you're doing? What are your accounts payable, your accounts receivable? You got to know the basic understandings and how is the company running as a whole. So yeah, I wake up, I get mirrored into sales tickets. You never know when I have to step in or if they need some advice on something or if just to watch what's corresponding. Sometimes I also draw ideas from some of these emails because they're looking for something that no one supplies a need for, but it might be something that I can turn into an opportunity. So that's one of the reasons why I also like to continually talk to my end customers as well as the integrators that are in between me and the end customers, is because a lot of times it can tell you where the problems are, and as an electronic company, in our case, what innovation can we come up with to solve that problem where it creates a new market for us or a new product sale. So that's something that we always tend to look for. Then when I go to the office, the first thing before I even walk into my office, I just walk around the building and say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And they kind of just give me a quick lowdown of what's going on in their world. And I see if there's any crisis or any problem that needs to be handled. And then same thing. This goes back to my whole proactive, not reactive, which is if there is a problem, you don't wait for the customer to get angry. You go after the problem. And if you have no answer that day, that is an answer. You call them or email them or whatever. You got to communicate to them. And you tell them they're number one. You are on top of it. Unfortunately, you don't have any answers today, but we won't stop until we get a solution for you. And that's far better than a customer calling up saying, hey, how come I haven't heard anything from anybody? When am I going to hear something? I can't believe you guys. No one wants to hear that. So if you want to avoid that, there's a simple solution. Keep them informed. Even when you don't have updates, that is an update. And that's a big mistake I see a lot of people make when they're doing things. Customers are much happier when they know that you're thinking of them. And that's really the thing is that it doesn't matter how big of a customer they are. They could be giving you a few $1,000s worth of business or, tens of thousands or millions. They should all be treated the same. I know some people say, well, they're a large client. We got to bend over backwards for them. No, the small guys eventually become big guys too. And, at the end of the day, everybody's calling upon you for a particular expectation, and you have to deliver that expectation, not just because of the size of the company or whatever. No, because they're entitled to it. That's why they're using you as a company. Once again, that comes more into a philosophy thing, but that's our philosophy and it comes from the top. So I always tell my people, no. You got to always communicate when you can.
Yeah. I'm like a huge believer in over communication. Like, even if I'm coming to meet you for lunch, I'll be like, leaving now, left, 10 minutes away, 2 minutes away, like arriving, just because I totally agree with you. Like, everyone feels better when they are kept in the loop and they know what to anticipate and they know what to expect. And I think communication in that way is such a good way to do it, especially as a business owner. So something I'm interested in is like your leadership style. So as you have these hard things, I mean, you kind of alluded to it. It sounds like you're like approachable and you communicate with people and you're involved, but I'd be interested in sort of either like, how do you describe it and what do you think makes you a good leader? Or how has your leadership style sort of changed as the company has grown and you've had to solve different problems?
Well, I'm good until I say no. You're everybody's best friend until you have to tell them something that they don't want to hear. It's funny how that works. This is actually kind of this falls right into this question. I'll tell you a good story to learn from. When I first started this company, I thought it was going to be different. We're going to have go-karts, which we did, the little mini bikes that you can ride on, almost looks like a clown bike. We had those here. We had just moved into this building and like, wow, look at all this empty space. We can have a lot of fun here. And we were doing barbecues once a week and everybody was friendly with each other. I mean, we knew when to get firm and say, hey, but at the same point, everybody was getting friendly. We're going to have this, let's say, Google-like atmosphere where it's like a little playground type of thing. And I was trusting the employees to basically manage their own time properly and not abuse it. Well, it didn't last too long. Next thing you know, people are getting hurt, me included. That was an interesting one. But we eventually got to the point where we had to start making people sign waivers. I mean, it was ridiculous. It sounded fun, but we were all young. We were having a good time. But work needed to get done. And then they start getting mad at you and you're like, wait, what's going on here? And the barbecues that we were having once a week, you'd have one person on the grill for an hour. Next thing you know, it became two people on the grill for an hour. Then it became one person going out for the food before the barbecue rather than after work. And then two people on the grill. And then it became two people going out to get the food. And the next thing you know, a half a day is gone. And we're like, whoa, what is going on here? We don't pay you to just have a good time. Like, we pay you to do work. We want you to enjoy your work, but it's a mutual back and forth. And sometimes it really depends on the individuals. Some can manage themselves. Those are the people who can even work remotely at home. And others just can't manage themselves, and they're watching their show on TV, and then every once in a while jumping onto the computer type of person. So that was our first real taste of why there are the boundaries in place, where a boss can only be so much of a friend, because at some point that relationship sometimes gets a little bit mixed up. And then when you have to, say, look, there's a line of respect here. If they can't honor that, that's when things get a little dicey in that way. So that was one of our first lessons of, what are we going to do with this company? How are we going to interact? I always do try to listen, and some people will be more insistent and say, no, this, and be like, look, this is my decision. You got to go this direction. And sometimes they can accept it, sometimes they can't. Say, look, at the end of the day, it's on me if it doesn't work out. I'm not blaming you. It will be on me. So you get all these different dynamics between personalities and what you're doing with the company and how you're doing it. So the best thing to do is, I like to think I'm pretty laid back. As you can tell by my wonderful artificial house in the background, I'm very laid back. So
a piano player as well.
I didn't want to brag, but yes, I could play lots of Mozart, and God only knows what else you want me to think that I can play on my grand piano in the background. So I'm just waiting for the dog to come in the background, annoyingly or something. I got to get those video backgrounds instead. It's really something. Look, this is where everybody always wants that perfect answer. I tell people, like I tell my salespeople, don't copy my style. My style's me. You got to find your own style. At the end of the day, you want to deliver the message, but you can't be a robot to people. You can't copy what other people do. Sometimes you got to be your own person, and you are who you are. The minute you try to pretend to be something else, everybody knows you're trying to pretend to be somebody else. I happen to be a very sarcastic person. I also joke around a lot. I'm jovial. I don't think I ever grew up in my life. I'll probably be 80 years old and still doing something stupid just for the sake of it. You got to enjoy life. You know what I mean? So, but not everybody can handle that type of personality. So you got to understand when you go too far and when to pull back with what you're doing. But I use my style and what I do with people, and I go more or less around to the different people that I normally have to communicate with, and still being myself. But you got to know when you have to respect, when somebody's going to get easily their feelings hurt or something like that. So you got to be very adaptive. You got to respect their boundaries, but sometimes you don't know what that boundary is until you kind of put it to the test. So they may not find your joke funny. When you realize they're not finding your jokes funny, at the end of the day, give it a rest, that they're not into that type of humor or whatever it is. So I've gotten better at it over the years. Younger, I probably said, who cares, whatever. But no, it's not who cares, whatever. You really got to find that nice balance, whatever you do. You're going to get your love-hate relationships, but you can't take it personally. That's the key thing is you got to just realize business is business and personal is personal. And the people who can separate that do well for themselves. The ones who can't separate that business is business, personal is personal, that's when things become more problematic.
Yeah. I really like what you said, though, because in terms of what I would want a leader to be like, I would want them to care enough about me to try to adapt their leadership style to work most effectively with me. And it really sounds like you do that in the sense of, oh, I have this person or this team or this day or whatever that requires a different amount of attention from me as a leader than maybe a different day or a different group of people.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I try my best. Even I have my own moments where somebody will just push my button just a little too far, and then it's like, okay, you really went beyond. You lost that respect barrier, and then you get the other side of me. It happens very far and few in between, but it will happen to every boss where somebody will push their button, and then the question is, what are you going to do at that moment? And that's where you got to kind of keep things more in check and not let it fly off the handle too much. The key thing is, you can't just be like it all. Even though I happen to know it all, it's weird. But but seriously though, you gotta kind of be a little bit humble and realize. I know there's some bosses that say, I know what's going on. This is the way we're gonna do. We're gonna go forward, 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 forward. And that's a particular style, and you need the people who are regimented that way to follow that type of leadership. Yeah. You get the others who are a little too passive. Hey, what do you think, crew? What should we do? And it's like, okay, then you get a lot of uncertainties, a lot of unknowns. It sounds great. We're going to live the California lifestyle, and we're going to go lay back at the beach afterwards. That style's got its things too. And then there's the middle ground where you kind of try to meet both ways, where you're not telling and ordering people around. I mean, you're directing them, but you're still making them feel like they're a part of whatever it is that you're doing. People want to feel like they're part of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So I always tell people, even the person who takes out the garbage is as important as anybody else in this company. Because guess what? If they didn't take it out, well, the garbage is going to be pretty full, and it's not going to be exactly a very pleasant office if that's the case. So are they needed? Absolutely, they're needed. They're an essential part of the company, just like the person who sells the job to begin with, and just the person who engineers the board with me, but or the people who test it or work with you, or software pro. They're all critical components in it. And so you got to just respect all different aspects of it. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been great chatting. I think for sort of overall advice that I'd love to hear you give to our listeners is like, where do you think most founders end up wasting time when things get hard? Like, you've talked about these transitions that you've gone through and what you've done. Like, where do you think people tend to spend their energy that you don't think pays off in the long run?
Overthinking, hands down. They overthink it. And instead of, at some point, you got to get something to market. I mean, I guess it depends on the business you're in, but in my business, which is manufacturing, you got to get it to market. You only make the money when it's in the marketplace. But you gotta, if you overthink the design and think you can keep making it better and better and better and better, well, that's why, you have my Samsung S26 is better than the first 25. At some point, you got to release it, know that it's good enough to intrigue people and make them eventually wait for the next revision and go forward. If you overthink it, it never goes to market. And at some point, somebody's going to beat you to the punch if you wait too long. So that's usually my best advice to people is don't overthink things either. Or sometimes their processes get in the way. I know some people were just having a conversation on it the other day with using Scrum versus other techniques. And I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of Scrum. That's a me thing. I think sometimes it can take too long to get from point A to point B, because in Scrum there's no point A to point B. It goes around and around and around, and it's like, oh my God, can we ever get out of this and just move forward again? So I am the person who likes to just keep going, trial and error, keep moving forward until you know what you got is going to be it. So I like to keep it simple, stupid, for the people who like the good old KISS mentality, not the band. So keep it simple, keep it simple, stupid. Mm-hmm. So, although the band wouldn't be a bad thing either, so we can work with that. And then, so those are some things too. Also, remember to wear a better shirt when you're having an interview, so you don't have to wear your fluffy jacket. That's why my jacket is zipped up right now, is because I have a T-shirt underneath this that has a cartoon on it. So, and you're wondering, why is he wearing a jacket in his nice, fake, cozy home with the piano that he allegedly plays Mozart on? Yeah, it's because I forgot I was doing this at work today, and my spare shirt that I usually have on the wall, not there. By the way, another tip. Always keep a nice shirt or pants hanging on your door or nearby, so if God forbid you need to change, you got to change. Well, mine's at the dry cleaner, so there's that one. So I have an itchy and scratchy shirt for those of you who may want to know what's underneath here, but yes, it is a itchy and scratchy shirt. Yes, I'm a big fan of itchy and scratchy. Not so much The Simpsons, although they are great. Gotta love itchy and scratchy. It was my alternate to Tom and Jerry. What can I tell you?
Well, your embarrassing shirt experience will live on in infamy via this podcast. So
gotta make it interesting. Otherwise, it's just a lot of talk. Now you got something interesting to go. I'm sure it's going to be all over the news. CNN and Fox are going to have differentiating opinions on it. I'm going to be slewed all over the internet now. I'm done for at this point. Paul Harris wears itchy and scratchy shirts.
Which is a good headline, because it could be really misinterpreted, which is always good for headlines.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. Anyway. But it's been a pleasure. I do thank you. Anyone who wants to know anything about us, by the way, shameless plug, AuroraMM.com, AuroraMM as in multimedia.com, if you want to see what we do. And you never know when you're going to need something that we have.
Absolutely. Especially because you guys are innovating all the time.
That is for sure.
Well, Paul, it was so great to have you on the Lion's Den. Thank you so much for sharing, just your experience, and it was a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.